You care what people think more than you want to admit, more than you even notice. Every time you speak, decide, or create, there's a quiet voice wondering how it might come across. You start shaping your life around reactions that haven't even happened, and slowly, without realizing it, you become a performer in your own day-to-day life. Here's the truth. Most of your stress comes from an imagined audience. You rehearse your lines, edit your personality, and shrink your choices, not because you want to, but because you fear being judged for who you really are. The Stoics understood this long before social pressure existed as it does today. They knew that the heaviest chains are often invisible, and they knew that the more you try to please everyone, the further you drift from yourself. You're not tired of people, you're tired of acting. And this is where your freedom begins. Chapter 1. What you control versus what you imagine. The stories that weigh you down. A lot of the pressure you feel doesn't come from real events. It comes from the stories your mind builds around them. You replay moments, assume meanings, and fill silence with predictions. That habit makes simple situations feel heavier than they are. Think about the last time you sent a message and didn't get an immediate reply. Your rational mind knows there are innocent explanations. They're busy, they didn't see it. But another part immediately starts writing a darker story. They're ignoring me. I said something wrong. They're upset. You've created an entire narrative from silence. The Stoic dichotomy of control. The Stoics understood this well. Epictetus taught that peace begins when you separate what you can shape from what you can't. He called this the dichotomy of control. Here's what actually belongs to you: your decisions, your effort, your attitude, your interpretations, your values, your attention. Here's what doesn't: someone else's opinion, another person's mood, what someone thinks but doesn't say, how your words will be received, whether people approve of your choices. No matter how much time you spend worrying about these external things, they remain outside your reach. Yet most of us spend more energy on things we can't control than on things we can. The protection that becomes prison. Your mind tries to protect you by preparing for everything. It runs simulations. What if they think this? What if I look foolish? What if I fail? But most of those imagined scenarios never happen. They just clutter your thoughts and pull you away from the present moment. Epictetus didn't live calmly because life was easy. Born into slavery, disabled, living through tyranny, his circumstances were harsh. He lived calmly because he refused to carry what wasn't his responsibility. When you keep your attention on what you can actually direct, your day feels lighter. Your choices feel clearer. You stop getting lost in worries that were never real. Life becomes manageable, not because everything changes, but because you finally see what's truly yours to hold. Chapter 2. The Spotlight Illusion. The audience that isn't watching. Most of the fear you feel around other people comes from one belief: that everyone is paying close attention to you. But they aren't. People are busy carrying their own doubts, chasing their own goals, managing their own worries. They might glance your way, but their thoughts return to themselves almost instantly. Think about your own experience. How often do you replay someone else's awkward moment compared to your own? Modern psychology calls this the spotlight effect. Research shows we vastly overestimate how much others notice us. In one famous study, students wearing embarrassing t-shirts believed about half the room noticed. In reality, fewer than 25% did, and they forgot almost immediately. The ancient wisdom. The Stoics knew this long before it was studied. They saw how ego exaggerates everything. Every mistake, every reaction, every glance. Life moves too fast for sustained attention on you. People forget quickly. The thing you thought they noticed, they probably didn't. And even if they did, it didn't stay with them. When you really understand this, enormous pressure drops away. You stop rehearsing your lines. You stop editing yourself constantly. You begin to move through the world with more ease. And that small shift opens the door to something you've always wanted: the ability to be yourself without constantly watching yourself. Chapter 3. The pain of living through others' eyes. The slow disappearance. You can lose yourself without realizing it. One small compromise at a time. A softened opinion here, a forced smile there. You change how you speak, how you act, how you think, all to avoid disappointing someone or to blend into whatever room you're in. Maybe you laugh at jokes you don't find funny. Maybe you hide interests that might seem weird. Maybe you stay silent when you disagree. Each instance seems minor. It doesn't matter, you tell yourself. It's easier this way. The accumulating cost, the problem is that every time you reshape yourself to please someone else, you drift a little further from who you actually are. These small compromises accumulate, gradually burying your authentic self. Eventually, you look in the mirror and feel a quiet disconnect, as if you're living someone else's life. You might not even be able to answer simple questions anymore. What do I actually enjoy? What do I believe? What matters to me? The answers have been buried under so many years of adaptation. The Stoic warning: the Stoics believed that letting outside approval define you is one of the fastest ways to weaken your sense of self, because when your identity depends on the crowd gets to decide your worth, and crowds change their mind constantly. The path back: you don't need to rebel against everyone. You don't need to be loud or defiant. You just need to stop handing out permission slips for your own identity. The more you choose your values over their expectations, the stronger you become. Start small. Notice one area where you've been performing instead of being genuine. In that one area, practice responding from your actual preference. Feel the discomfort, but also notice the relief, the sense of reclaiming yourself. Chapter 4. The Stoic Practice of Inner Authority. Writing to himself, Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote his philosophical journal privately, never intending it for publication. He understood something crucial: if you don't guide your own mind, the world will guide it for you. He wasn't writing for praise. He wasn't trying to appear wise. He was building an inner voice strong enough to navigate life without constantly seeking approval. What inner authority means: inner authority is simple. Your choices come from your values, not from reactions to what others expect. It doesn't mean ignoring people or resisting advice. It means you decide which opinions matter and which ones pass through you without impact. Think of it like having a personal board of advisors, people whose judgment you trust, whose values align with yours. When you face a decision, you might consult them. But the random person on social media, the acquaintance who barely knows your situation, they don't get a seat at your table. Life without inner authority. When you live without inner authority, every comment becomes a command. Every raised eyebrow becomes a warning. Every silence feels like disapproval. You end up adjusting yourself constantly to avoid friction instead of moving toward what matters, the transformation. But when you build your own inner compass, the world quiets down. You don't need constant reassurance because your direction is clear. You don't need validation because you trust your reasoning. Once your actions come from a place you believe in, outside judgment loses its grip. Build your inner authority by identifying your core principles. Not what you should value, but what you actually do. If you had to write 5 non-negotiable rules for your life, what would they be? Then practice consulting them when making decisions. Chapter 5. The Courage to be Misunderstood, the Uncomfortable Truth. If you want to live with clarity, you have to accept something uncomfortable. Not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. You can be honest, balanced, and thoughtful, and still people will misread your intentions. You can make the most reasonable choice, and someone will question it. This isn't paranoia, it's reality. Everyone views the world through their own fears, beliefs, and experiences. Your carefully chosen words pass through their personal filter, and sometimes what comes out barely resembles what you meant. The Stoic acceptance. The Stoics embraced this early. They knew that chasing universal approval was impossible. Epictetus taught, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. He wasn't promoting foolishness, he was acknowledging that growth often looks strange to those not on the same path. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." When misunderstanding happens, you set a boundary, and someone takes it personally. You pursue a new direction, and people say you've changed. You decline an invitation to protect your energy, and they think you don't care. You speak your truth carefully, and someone hears it as an attack. Each misunderstanding creates a choice. Do you contort yourself to correct every misperception? Or do you accept that some gap between intention and interpretation is simply the cost of being human? The freedom in acceptance. When you accept that misunderstanding is part of life, you stop bending yourself into shapes that don't fit. You start making choices based on what's right, not what's popular or easily understood. And instead of defending your every move, you simply move. This courage doesn't feel loud. It feels steady, like a quiet refusal to abandon your path just to keep everyone comfortable. And ironically, the moment you stop trying to be understood is the moment you finally begin to understand yourself. Chapter 6. Detaching from praise and criticism. The double-edged sword. It's easy to think the real problem is criticism, but praise can be just as limiting. If compliments lift you too high, negativity will crush you just as easily. Both tie your worth to external noise, and both take you away from your own judgment. Think about how quickly mood shifts based on a single comment. Someone praises your work, and you're energized. An hour later, someone criticizes that same work, and you're deflated, questioning everything. Your emotional state bounces between these poles like a pinball. The Stoic middle path Stoics aimed for steadiness, not indifference, but balance. They didn't want their internal state to swing based on what others said. They wanted to live from the inside out, not the outside in. Marcus Aurelius practiced objective representation, seeing things as they are, stripped of good or bad labels. A compliment is just words. A criticism is the same. The meaning and power we give them is our choice. The trap. You've felt this trap before. Doing something well and immediately checking who noticed, or holding back from trying something new because you fear the comments. What if people don't like it? What if I fail publicly? Praise and criticism become two sides of the same leash. The shift, but when you start acting for the sake of the action itself, for the learning, the growth, the alignment with your principles, everything changes. You focus on improvement rather than approval. You judge by your own standard. Did I give my best? Did I act according to my values? Did I learn something? This is where real confidence grows, not from being admired, but from being anchored. You can still appreciate kind words, but appreciation is different from dependence. You can still learn from criticism, but learning is different from being shaken at your core. Chapter 7. Building your own standard. The drift without direction. The moment you begin setting your own standard, you stop needing the world's. Most people drift because they've never defined what good means for them. What does integrity look like? How do you want to show up? What do you expect from yourself when no one's watching? Without that foundation, you automatically absorb the expectations of whoever you're around. You're constantly shape-shifting, and the exhaustion slowly drains you. The Stoic personal code. Stoics lived by a clear personal code, not rigid rules but a quiet understanding of what kind of person they aimed to become. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself of his core virtues: justice, courage, self-discipline, and wisdom. These weren't abstract ideals, they were practical tools for daily decisions. When you have your own standard, when you build your own standard, decisions become cleaner. You don't feel the need to impress. You stop adjusting yourself depending on which room you're in. You start saying yes and no with conviction. You realize you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be consistent with the person you've chosen to be. The standard isn't about flawlessness. It's about honest self-assessment and genuine effort. And once your standard becomes what you measure yourself against, outside opinions lose their disproportionate influence. You've already decided who you are and what you're building. You become, in the truest sense, self-governing. Chapter 8. The quiet life of self-respect. What freedom actually looks like. Freedom isn't loud. It doesn't demand recognition. Real freedom is subtle. It's the calm that comes from not needing approval to feel complete. It's the strength of acting from your values rather than reacting to expectations. It's the peace from trusting your own judgment. It's the quiet confidence of knowing you don't need to win everyone over. You just need to be aligned with yourself. The Stoic definition of success. The Stoics weren't trying to be admired, though many were. They were trying to live clearly, with virtue, with reason, with awareness. And that clarity created a peace that no opinion could give or take away. Epictetus found profound freedom in the one thing no one could take, his faculty of choice. Marcus Aurelius, with all of Rome's power, remained focused not on legacy but on living each day according to principle. The transformation point. You stop caring what people think the moment you start caring more about who you're becoming. The center of gravity shifts from external to internal. When someone criticizes you, you can consider whether they're right without being devastated or defensive. When someone praises you, you can appreciate it without needing it. The volatility drains away, replaced by something steadier. Walking your path. This is the quiet life of self-respect. Walking your path even when others don't understand it. Holding your standard even when it would be easier to lower it. Respecting yourself enough to make choices you can live with. It's showing up as yourself. Flawed, growing, imperfect, but genuine. It's knowing you'll be misunderstood sometimes, criticized sometimes, ignored sometimes, and being okay with that because the alternative, performing endlessly for an audience that will never be satisfied, is no longer acceptable. This is Stoic freedom. This is Stoic freedom, not the absence of challenges or the elimination of others' opinions. It's the presence of something stronger, a self-respect deep enough that external turbulence can't shake your foundation. You don't become invulnerable. You become unshakable. Not because nothing affects you, but because you've found the still point within yourself that remains constant.